Well, hello again. Welcome back. Incredibly, I am still here. My name's Orion. I'm autistic and I'm emceeing for you once again. And welcome back, everyone. Thank you for joining us at this Autism at Work virtual summit. We're about to head into our next session, Learning and Earning. It's just a quick one too. Thank you. I just genuinely want to thank you to I'll need to hire another person. The many people who have already started to reach out on my LinkedIn, on my Twitter, on my Facebook, on my website, email. I don't think TikTok and all that. I've been hearing from people. It's great to hear your feedback and support, and hopefully I can connect with you more. You should also, everyone watching right now, should subscribe to my YouTube channel, because then I'll actually be able to make money. Just search Orion Kelly, that autistic guy. Okay. All right. We're going to have a session now on learning and earning. Ironically, that's what I just talked about. And it's moderated by Callie Jackson, Marketing and Communication Manager of Autism CRC. Before we get to Callie, once again, just a reminder, you are able to ask questions. So you type your questions in the Q&A panel, okay? So you'll see on the side there's a Q&A, and then there's the survey. You access that pane by clicking on the Q&A tab. And if your question is for a particular panelist, just include their name and your question. Other people's questions will also appear, as you know, in the Q&A panel once they've been approved by the moderators. If you like that question and you don't need to write your own, then you can just upvote it, okay, by clicking on the arrow beside it. Obviously, we'll get to as many answers as possible, depending on how many we get and how many we can get through. So let's get down to business. Callie Jackson, over to you.
Thanks very much, Orion. I appreciate that. I'm very pleased to be the facilitator of this session, where I have the absolute pleasure of introducing some of my wonderful colleagues. We will be hearing three distinct presentations in this session, and that will be followed by a joint Q&A. The presentations will follow the journey from learning to earning, and I'm sure you will gain useful insights from each of our presenters. So without further ado, let me introduce you to the myWAY employability team for our first presentation, the delightful Marina Ciccarelli from Curtin University, and the wonderful Brendan James and Cheryl Mangan from Autism CRC. Marina, Cheryl and Brendan have pre-recorded their presentation, so we will watch that now.
Good afternoon. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land which I'm standing, the Turrbal and the Yagara peoples, who are also the first innovators of this land. I pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. Hi, I'm Cheryl Mangan, and I have the joy of heading up Knowledge Translation for Autism CRC. I'm presenting here today with my wonderful colleagues, myWAY Employability Co-Lead Associate Professor Marina Ciccarelli and our Digital Product Manager, Brendan James. So today I'm going to start with a bit of background about who we are and our purpose. I'm going to take you through our work to date to show you just how we got here. Then I'm going to hand you over to my wonderful colleague, Brendan, to take you through some of the design features and elements of myWAY Employability. Marina's then going to share, for the first time ever, some of the insights we've gained from our first 10,000 users. Finally, we want to share our current plan and tell you just how you can get involved. Autism CRC was established in 2013 under the Commonwealth Government's CRC program. Our vision is to see autistic people empowered to use their diverse strengths and interests. Together with our 56 partners around Australia, we develop and deliver evidence-based outcomes, programs, tools and resources in deep partnership with the autistic community, universities, health professionals, industry and government. We work across the lifespan. In the early years, focusing on earlier and more accurate diagnosis. In the school years, enhancing learning and teaching, and more importantly, promoting inclusive educational environments. In adulthood, health and well-being, improving participation in higher education and employment with initiatives like the Autism at Work Summit, of course myWAY, and the Integrated Employment Success Tool, which is coming up next. So myWAY Employability didn't just happen overnight. It's built on the foundation of many years of research dating back to 2014. We've spent the last 3 years designing and developing the platform with many autistic young people and their supporters. We launched myWAY Employability in August last year, and since then have reached over 11,000 unique visitors, including 1,300 registered users. But where did we start? The challenge that really motivated us to develop myWAY Employability was that the unemployment rate for autistic people is 31.6%. We know that this is more than 3 times the rate of people with disability and almost 6 times the rate of people without a disability. We also know that only 26% graduate from post-secondary education and training, significantly less than their peers with even other disabilities. Unsuccessful transition to work increases the risk of labour force and social exclusion, as well as physical and mental health issues downstream. While we know on the flip side, a better transition from school to work leads to higher potential for employment, higher job satisfaction and productivity in the workplace, and greater capacity for independent living. So we started with the better outcomes and successful transitions for autism research. We started with the needs analysis into the transition, planning and practices and experiences of autistic students. This showed that despite their numerous strengths, many autistic young people have difficulty transitioning from high school to employment and further education and training. And unfortunately, too many do not have the opportunity to participate in formal transition planning, career exploration, and supported work experiences. Based on these insights, the team at Curtin University developed the Boost Day program into a basic website, and then they ran it through a clinical trial with 94 autistic students all over Australia. The Boost Day was shown to improve the self-determination in autistic young people to achieve their employment goals, much more so than the students who used existing school-based transition planning. But the challenge we took on, now that we know that the Boost Day works, was how might we turn the Boost Day into an evidence-based, engaging web platform to help autistic young people plan and prepare for post-school education, training, or work. A secondary challenge that emerged very quickly was how might we build the capacity of parents, teachers, service providers, and professionals to support autistic young people in their transition planning. With the foundation of Boost Day, we knew that we needed to work with young people to determine the best way to get myWAY Employability into the hands of other young people and their supporters. We started with discovery, reviewing the research and the evaluation to date, but more importantly, talking to many young people and their supporters to understand the barriers and enablers of transition planning. We also wanted to know how young people on the spectrum use technology, how they find it engaging, what they like, what they don't like. Next, we defined the area to focus on. We sought to understand the key stakeholders and other players in this space so that we might complement and not duplicate that which is already out there. As we moved to a solution, we really focused in on working with autistic young people to ensure the platform meets their needs in terms of content and design preferences. Having now reached 11,000 unique visitors and 1,300 registered users, we just completed our first evaluation phase, reviewing the deep analytics of our users to understand who's using the platform and how. Marina has also conducted goal analysis to understand how myWAY is help turning young people's goals and plans into action to actually improve employability and employment outcomes. So these are some of our amazing young people. We were lucky enough to get some face-to-face workshops and user testing in schools before the pandemic hit, but towards the end of the project pre-launch, majority of our work has been online and most of our work now is online. But let me share just a little bit about what we learnt from young people. Autistic young people were so clear when they told us they wanted information in language that's clear and literal, information presented in uncluttered visual designs, services that are not patronising and acknowledged unique capabilities, content that's authentic, relevant, and developed from an autistic perspective. These features became our guiding principles, but also really impressed on us the need to work with autistic individuals to co-produce the content and the words and everything that you see within the myWAY employability platform. You can see some of the early design iterations there. Obviously, on the left, we've got the original Boost Day site that was used for research purposes, and then a couple more iterations. The result is myWAY Employability, a smart web platform that helps autistic young people plan and prepare for their working life. It takes young people through a series of questions to identify strengths, interests, sensory communication, and environmental preferences to guide their career path and the supports around them. It also has goal setting to help make a plan and then break tasks into smaller steps to track progress. Users can also invite others to help them on their way. So now I'm going to hand over to Brendan to take you through some of the co-design features and elements of myWAY Employability. Thank you.
Thanks, Cheryl. Hi, everyone. I'd like to start with the overall design language that we have for myWAY Employability. You see here the homepage of myWAY. And as we heard earlier, we've actually got the clear and uncluttered layout. So we have a nice calming blue. We've made sure that our content areas are actually spaced out. And we've actually minimized the animation on our site, so it's not to be distracting or anything like that. With our 4 characters there, we also have a diverse representation, so not just of gender, but occupations and people of color. We heard from young people a lot that sometimes, there's autistic employment programs that are designed specifically for technical jobs or, data heavy or finance kind of jobs where there's much more jobs out there that they would like to actually explore. And we also have a color and grayscale option. So we also heard that sometimes it helps to just focus in a high contrast environment, and remove all the flash. So we actually added a grayscale option where you can actually toggle that on and off. And here's our Career Explorer area. So originally this was showing the top 3 areas that you might like to explore a career after someone actually prioritizes a group of different activities. And when we tested this, we got a lot of feedback around wanting to see what the bottom 3 were. Not just so that's the bottom, but to be able to compare sort of the overall percentage breakdown to understand how far apart the percentages are. And it made us realize that, we need to have that flexibility in there so as to not actually push anyone down a certain career path. Just because someone is 24% artistic doesn't mean they need to do an artistic job. So we allow them to, jump into organised and see how many jobs are under the organised category as well, even though that's a fairly low percentage. We want to make sure that that flexibility is there. And moving on to sensory preferences. So this is where you declare your preferences for what would be a comfortable working environment. We originally had these questions as a very binary sort of option. So, when it came to noise preferences, we had, do you like quiet or noisy? And when we were testing this and discussing it with young people, it was, well, it depends what sort of a noise it is. Is it other people talking? Is it music? Is it an alarm? Is it a hum? How quiet is too quiet? That kind of thing. And so we sort of went down the path of sort of realizing that sometimes preferences, depends. And so this is much more of a conversation starter to have about that level of noise or that level of quiet. But sometimes the sensory preference doesn't even really matter or factor in. So we actually made the option to simply just say that they don't mind as well. And moving on to our goal management. So we heard from young people all the time in our workshops around what's next. They just wanted to know what's next to do to help progress them in a career. So we actually made our goals to be broken down into tasks where you can clearly see where you're up to. You can also assign your tasks to a team member. You can tick them off one by one to feel that sense of achievement, but you can actually have a tangible visual progress towards your goal. And when you do achieve your goal, it actually has a little bit of a reflection piece. So we asked 2 simple questions, what helped you to achieve the goal, what made it difficult to achieve the goal, and a bit of a feeling scale, the emojis down there. And this is not just to celebrate the achievement, but also some goals you finish might not feel as much of a success as others, but we certainly don't want them to feel like a failure either. So we wanted to highlight the fact that when you finish your goal, it's actually a learning experience, and to capture that learning experience is actually quite beneficial. It promotes that growth mindset, and you can also notify your team members with that to be able to both, share in the accomplishment, but also talk about those lessons learned and what we could do next time. And moving on to content, we've actually got about 40 different content articles ranging from things like what to wear to a job interview to disclosure at work, workplace communication, getting to work, things like that. And we actually did a card sorting exercise with young people to help understand the demand and what's missing in terms of content and assistance in that area. And we also made sure that they were copy edited, copy reviewed several times by neurodiverse team members. As we heard earlier, we wanted to make sure that we have content that is authentic, but also provides the autistic perspective as well. It was very important to us. So we basically have that as a principle. With any other content that we make, we get it reviewed, we get it edited by neurodiverse team members to make sure that perspective is there constantly. But as for now, I'll hand you over to Marina, who's going to talk about our impact.
Thanks, Brendan. Hi, everyone. My name's Marina Ciccarelli, and I'm going to share with you some of our learnings from our first 1,100 registered myWAY employability users. Now, we've analysed de-identified website data to learn about the profiles of our users, the content on our website that they most often go to, their satisfaction with their experience of using the website, and the nature of the goals that they're developing to build their employability. And the findings of our analysis will help us to continue to develop content that is relevant and easy to access and use. So myWAY Employability launched in August of 2020, and since then it's had over 11,000 unique visitors and over 1,100 registered users in Australia and internationally have registered a profile to begin exploring careers that are matched to their interests, their strengths, and their sensory preferences. Upon registration, our users told us that about half of them were in high school. So if you look at the graph on the left, and just over a third of them were in post-school education or training. If you look at the graph on the right, 1/4 were employed full-time and half were not employed at all. Only 6% were engaged in any kind of work experience or volunteering activities, and we know that these two pre-vocational activities are very important to help young people to try out different fields of work, build their job skills and their job behaviours, and also to start creating professional networks that might lead to future employment. Our registered users are located in every Australian state and mainland territory, as well as overseas countries. Our Australian users tend to be in the cities, but the number who are in regional areas is also growing. So we've asked our visitors for feedback via Hotjar, and this feature pops up when users are on the website, and it asks them to rate their satisfaction with the site and to provide comments and suggestions for improvement. And we use this feedback to continuously improve the content and look and the feel of the resources as well as ease of use. So, for example, one user told us that they appreciated being able to rate their interests on a 100-point sliding scale. This meant that their responses could be very, very precise and that they knew that they could change their responses at any time. Now, these are the 6 vocational personalities based on the foundational work of John Holland, but ours have got a bit of a twist to better meet the needs of autistic individuals. Now, we believe that people are not unidimensional, so it's important not just to limit job exploration to the top-rated vocational personalities. In fact, this graph shows the average ratings across each of the 6 personalities, vocational personalities, by the 1,100 registered users. And you can see that activities involving helping and investigative and practical tasks were the most highly rated and similarly popular. However, artistic activities were a close second behind these. Activities that involved organisational or entrepreneurial skills were rated the lowest by our users. Nearly all of our registered users told us that they preferred learning a new task by listening to someone explain how to do the activity, as well as watching demonstrations, videos, and pictures of how to do the task. They also preferred to practice the activity themselves or to work it out as they go along. Interestingly, only 40% said that they preferred to learn a new task by reading written instructions. And so we'll use this information to add more visual content to our resources, including some video modelling and some short videos that have autistic individuals sharing their experiences and their advice. We asked users to consider the work environments that they would prefer, taking their sensory needs into consideration. And while many preferred working mostly individually, indoors most of the time, in a quiet environment with few strong smells present, many actually didn't mind and were open to working in a variety of work environments. Now, these users can use this information to consider the types of jobs that they might explore and to facilitate a discussion with post-school educators and prospective employers about their preferences and how they might be able to be accommodated. So our registered users have set over 400 goals that were achieved or are in the process of being achieved. And we classified our users' goals into 9 different categories or themes. So the first one is further career exploration, wanting to know more about what job demands are, how much they might get paid, as well as what qualifications might be involved. Achieving academic success at high school, TAFE or university. Increasing their independence in activities of daily living, including community mobility, so using public transportation or driving a car, and less reliance on parents and family members. Engaging in work experience or volunteering activities was also listed as goals. Exploring or planning to start their own business. Building job skills through obtaining licenses, tickets and certificates. And preparing and applying for jobs, including developing a resume, writing a job application, or even practicing an interview. Broadening professional and personal networks, and finally, either seeking a mentor or becoming a mentor to others. Now, we know that it can be challenging to develop goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and within a time frame. So we'll continue adding and refining the goal-setting resources on myWAY Employability to assist young people to write goals that they can achieve to build their confidence and their self-determination. Our research has told us that self-determination is one of the most important factors for success in future employment. So what's next for myWAY Employability? Well, we've developed an engaging platform for young people to start career exploration and planning. So we're now engaging with employers, disability service providers, and employment support specialists to understand how we might enable permissioned information sharing and collaborative career planning amongst these stakeholders to help them better support young autistic people. We'll continue further enhancements in usability, goal setting and progress tracking, and our job profiles to improve the value and experience of myWAY Employability for our registered users. If you'd like to be a part of the future user testing or to give us some feedback, then please email Brendan. So Cheryl, Brendan and I, thank you for joining us today. If you haven't yet checked out myWAY Employability, there's the website address. We encourage you and your young person to visit the website and register and start planning for the future by creating those goals and working towards them. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you very much, Marina, Cheryl and Brendan, for that excellent overview of myWAY Employability. I would now like to introduce Professor Sonia Girdler. Sonia is the Autism CRC's Director for our Adulthood Program and is also the Director of the Curtin Autism Research Group and a Professor of Occupational Therapy at Curtin University in Western Australia. Sonia has also pre-recorded her presentation, so we'll see that now.
Hi everyone, my name is Sonia Girdler and I'm excited today to share with you one of our newest tools, the Integrated Employment Success Tool, or the IEST. In presenting this work, I would like to acknowledge my wonderful colleagues, particularly Dr. Melissa Scott, who undertook the development of the IAST as part of her PhD studies, and Professor Sylvia Roger, who originally conceived the idea of the IAST as a tool focusing on the environment, and the hundreds of autistic individuals, their families, and employers who contributed to our research in evaluating the efficacy of this tool. Autism spectrum disorders are defined according to their presenting traits and their impact on functioning. There are two core areas of challenge that autistic adults experience. These include difficulties in social interaction and communication. For example, they may experience difficulty interacting during conversations and understanding expected social norms. They also may experience challenges with eye contact during conversations and a tendency to engage in repetitive or restricted behaviours and have really in-depth interests and experience sensory sensitivities. To date, research and interventions in autism have focused on these impairments and these challenges, and few have taken a strengths-based approach. However, the past decade has seen a change in thinking. The neurodiversity movement has challenged the focus of research and interventions on deficits, with autistic individuals calling for a more balanced perspective, which recognises that while autistic individuals may experience many challenges, they also have many skills, abilities, and even strengths which can be harnessed in many life areas, including employment. But until recently, few frameworks have allowed for this balanced perspective and understanding of functioning in autism that can be inclusive of a neurodiversity approach. However, the International Classification of Functioning, Disability and Health is a notable exception. The ICF looks at disability holistically. While it considers impairment and participation restriction, it also considers factors within an individual's environment and personal factors within the individual that either facilitate or pose a barrier to functioning. The ICF highlights that disability is not just a health problem. It is a complex phenomenon reflecting the interaction between the features of a person's body and features of the society in which they live. But the ICF has over 1,685 categories, making it somewhat unwieldy as a framework for research and understanding the functioning of individuals. But because of an extensive international project led by KIND at the Karolinska Institute in Stockholm, Sweden, we now have the ICF core sets for ASD. These core sets have identified those categories most relevant to understanding functioning in autism. These core sets have been an enormous help to researchers such as myself. The ICF Comprehensive Core Sets for ASD defines 111 relevant codes, which, while it includes body functions and structures, it also focuses on activities and participation in major life areas and the impact that environmental factors have on functioning. It provides a holistic perspective, integrating personal, social, and environmental aspects. This work has also provided a more balanced perspective, highlighting that autistic individuals have many skills, abilities, and strengths, many of which can be leveraged in employment contexts. Collectively, the ICF core sets for ASD, the neurodiversity paradigm, and strengths approaches provide a unique framework which can be used in improving outcomes in major life areas such as employment. But how do we make this happen? Over 5 years, we developed the IAST. The IAST is an evidence-based guide for employers of autistic adults, and we developed this with more than 100 employers and many autistic individuals. The IAST underwent efficacy testing in an Australian-wide randomised control trial, in which we found employers who used the IAST increased their understanding of autism and their efficacy in supporting autistic employees. The purpose of the IAST is to increase awareness of autism and highlight the strengths of autistic employees, identify the potential environmental factors in the workplace that may be a challenge for these autistic employees, and detail actions and modifications required to resolve environmental workplace challenges. Also, to foster beneficial relationships between employers and autistic employees, and focus on their strengths and what they might need to work more effectively. Improve employee productivity, job retention, and overall workplace success. The IAST has many potential benefits for all employees. It details strategies that work for many autistic employees. It promotes team building. It provides opportunities for personal growth to learn about human diversity and deliver supports which allow autistic employees to thrive in the workplace. The IAST has been designed to be user-friendly. In developing the manual, we were very aware that employees are very busy people. The manual details information on workplace requirements. It provides tips and advice, such as highlighting the workplace inclusion is not specific to autism, and that workplace environments should encourage inclusion and diversity. It outlines questions to consider, such as have you thought about the effect difficulties in social interaction and communication might have on the interview process. It includes ready-to-use summary checklists for each of the employment phases, and it draws from experiences of over 100 employers in employing autistic workers. And it presents relevant research findings which underpinned the development of the IAST. Strategies and checklists for each phase have been specifically designed to assist in developing, modifying, and maintaining a workplace. These strategies are generic and provide an overall and general approach for assisting autistic employees to be more successful, no matter which environment they work in. Because all workplaces are not the same, in using the IAST, employers need to decide what approaches to use in their workplace. As one employer who used the IAST said, the IAST provided good overall information, and as a result of using it, we improved our recruitment and interview processes for all employees. The IAST provides a decision-making tree to help employers identify the stage of the employment process that they are at, and to direct them to the most appropriate chapter for their stage of the employment journey. The IAST also provides information on understanding autism, focusing on developing strengths through identifying an employee's skills and interests, reminding them to think about the match between the job tasks and their employees' skills and interests, and how to reward good work with recognition. As the amazing Dr. Wen Lawson said, it is important to talk about autism in a positive way, and not to deny the difficulties, but to open a way forward so those difficulties can become more less so. A positive outlook enthuses, creates, restores, and brings hope. Phase 1 of the IAST covers the initial phase of employment. While it is now widely recognised that autistic individuals have many skills to offer employers and bring with them many benefits to the workplace, for many autistic individuals, getting a job in the first place can be difficult. But just a few simple adjustments to the job advertising phase can make the process of applying for a job a little easier, clearer, and more accessible for autistic individuals. The IAST details these. For example, in describing a job, the IAST reminds employees to use clear, concise, and factual wording in the job description, to avoid using company jargon, metaphors, smileys, and catchphrases wording in the description. The IAST also reminds employers that in working to overcome barriers during the interview process, making it clear that accommodations or adjustments can be made if desired, will likely encourage autistic individuals to apply. Interviews are essentially a conversation between two or more people, where a series of questions are asked to find out if the applicant is the most suitable person for the job. Fundamentally, interviews depend on communication skills, social interaction, and applicants' ability to promote themselves and their skills to their future employer. For many autistic individuals, interviews can be stressful because of their challenges in communication and social skills. To help them with this process, the IAST details considerations that might be helpful during their interview. It reminds employers to consider what they expect to get out of the interview, and also to consider if a formal interview is necessary to assess the applicant's suitability. Maybe there are more effective ways, such as work experience or a job trial, in actually assessing if the applicant is the most suitable person for the job. A summary checklist steps employers through the things to do for an interview, reminding them to think about the strategies required. Phase 3 of the IEST covers job commencement. It reminds employers that autistic employees tend to prefer workplaces that are organised and well structured. These type of workplaces allow employees to demonstrate their strengths, which can benefit the business. In order to maximise an employee's strengths, it is important to make sure that employees have a thorough understanding of how their job expectations and what their productivity requirements are in their position. The summary checklist provides a reminder of the important aspects to consider in job commencement for autistic employees. As one of the employers in our study highlighted, I think it is important to be clear that this is a professional environment, that there are certain expectations, and to explain these. Maybe think about the things that employees should know before coming into the workplace and provide this information early. Phase 4 covers workplace modifications. An autistic employee may experience many challenges in the workplace due to the nature of their disability and the type of work they are involved in, or the physical environment. The IEST highlights the importance of being aware of these potential challenges, as well as knowing how to establish a workplace that promotes effective participation and equal opportunity. As one of our employers shared, I think it is a good thing to provide details about how the workplace usually works, and then ask if there are any aspects that we can adapt. The IEST details steps in the workplace modification process in the areas of sensory, social, communication, activity and task adjustment, and the physical environment. There is no end date to supporting an autistic employee in the workplace. Providing ongoing support is key, especially when employees are aiming to retain employment in a workplace. Strategies such as providing regular feedback and supervision, reviewing their support plan and effectiveness of this plan, and any ongoing strategies that might be needed to sustain their employment. Reviewing job tasks, supervision, and the team they are working in are all key in ensuring that autistic employees contribute to the workplace and have an opportunity to thrive. The IEST provides helpful tips on supporting the mental health of autistic employees and highlights some of the challenges of living with autism, including a tendency for autistic individuals to want to work to their best of their ability all the time, and often their need to work hard to fit into their work and social environments. This and their need to do things accurately can sometimes exhaust them and take a toll on their mental health, often making them more susceptible to anxiety. The IEST reminds employers to look out for change in mood, behaviours and physical appearance. It also details information on some things to consider when discussing mental health with autistic employees. So overall, our work has found that employers do not incur additional costs when employing an autistic adult over and above that associated with any other employee. Consequently, at the organisational level, our research challenges the attitude that hiring autistic adults may result in a loss of productivity and increased costs associated with workplace modifications and additional training requirements and supervision. In fact, our research has shown that there are many benefits associated with employing autistic adults, including their attention to detail in work tasks and their work ethic compared to non-autistic employees. Autistic employees can offer organisations a competitive edge. Mr. Bradley Vinci, a research assistant in the Curtin Autism Research Group, is now going to share some of his experiences in the workplace.
Hello everybody, thank you for having me here today. My name is Bradley Vinci and I'm a researcher here at the CAR Group at Curtin University. In discussing my experiences with what it's like to be an adult on the spectrum navigating the working world, I would like to mention some challenges and some perspectives, as well as my experiences and perspectives in the working world. It's rather difficult not to immediately launch into going into a tirade about all the negatives of trying to find a job with autism. But the reality is that it's very real and grueling, challenging, that is often met with feelings of frustration, depression, and anxiety. To find a working environment that not only considers your needs, but also actively listens to your concerns and make accommodations for you so that you show them that you are a valuable, effective, and most importantly, productive employee can feel like a proverbial needle in the haystack. One main challenge that I have grappled with is letting people know that I have autism in the first place. To look at me at face value, you would think that there is nothing wrong with me. However, I feel that's because it's a result of years and years of social training and coordination in my formative years, i.e., how long to look at someone in the eye, or how to throw a ball, or how to navigate a conversation topic. And even if it's still not perfect, and even then it's still not perfect, in the interview stage of applying for the job, trying to pass yourself off as normal, a normal functioning person, an everyday Joe, it's just to be considered for the position is a challenge and mentally exhausting. And you still have to keep up when you get the job. Wouldn't it be great if an employer can see you for who you are without the song and dance? One thing I have had to learn is that there are a lot of places still not on board. I'm going to be blunt and say that the reality is that a lot of companies or organizations say what they say versus what they actually do in responses to employing people with autism or any disability for that matter is vastly different. An example is, in my experience, trying to apply for work, where I have once tried to apply for a autism advocacy place for about 5 years. Within that cover letter, I specifically included that I had autism and that I would be a valuable asset. I did not get a single response. However, I tried to change my tactic and redid my cover letter without including that I had autism. Funny enough, I started getting hits and responses. Another thing to mention is once in a job, do you have to support networks, tools, and workplace strategies to effectively do the job? Before coming to Curtin, I had a job at a call centre, taking calls for Centrelink, working on age pensions. I was good at that job. In having over 1,000 tasks, I have only ever had one return. However, there was a lack in seeing people as individuals or accommodating them. When I was feeling exhausted, stressed, I couldn't leave the desk. There was no space for me to depressure, and they increased my workload. Nobody listened to me or had people in specific training dealing with autistic individuals. So, in taking note of all these things that are wrong and could be better in the workforce and its dealings with autism, I would also like to mention some positives. I consider myself lucky living now in this day and age because in the last couple of years, we have been living on what I like to refer to as the golden age of autism. Now, what I mean by that is that now there are so many organizations, employees, and businesses are finally beginning to see and understand that having an autistic individual working for them who have their needs met can actually be a gift and not something to be feared. There are places really making efforts for inclusivity, as well as the government and organizations funding programs, seeing the value of interest in autistic people. The cognitive shift in the public's perception of autism from past misconceptions and representations compared to the real life may at times seem slow, but it is happening. and it's more prevalent. Autism becoming more visible and represented in the media and pop culture may play a part in this shift. People starting to see that not everyone with autism is a Rayman or a Sheldon Cooper, but perhaps they're more of a Mr. Bean or the Good Doctor. My positive experiences with working have only become about somewhat recently. Being in contact with a disability job provider has helped me to present better and formulate better resumes and cover letters, as well as advocating for me to employers my abilities and skill sets that could be beneficial for them, as well as teaching me the tools and skills not only to obtain a job, but to keep it. But my most positive experience is working with the Curtin Autism Research Group. Here, I have found an environment that understands my skills and abilities, and not only value my input in the work I produce, but also make accommodations for me with work times and spaces for me for when I'm feeling overwhelmed and tired. Also involving me and wanting my feedback on projects relating to autism. I feel like a valued employee whose voice is heard, and not a day goes by where I feel eternally grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sonia and Bradley. We really appreciate your thoughts and insights. Before I introduce our next speaker, I would like to remind you that you have the opportunity to submit text questions by typing your questions into the Q&A pane. You can access that pane by clicking on the Q&A tab on the right-hand side of your screen. If your question is for a particular panelist, please include their name in the question. Other people's questions will appear in your Q&A pane once they have been approved by our moderators. And if you like a question, you can give it an upvote, and that gives it more chance that we will ask it. As Orion said earlier, we will try to get through as many questions as we can, and we do have a good amount of time at the end of the session for questions. So please do send them through. I would now like to introduce Sharon Whipp for our third presentation. Sharon is an autism employment consultant for Untapped and is here to tell us about what that actually means. And importantly, she will also share what she's learned over her years of helping implement autism employment programs in many different shapes, sizes, and environments. Sharon has also pre-recorded her presentation, so let's see that one now.
Hello and welcome to my presentation, A Day in the Life of an Autism Spectrum Consultant. My name is Sharon Whipp and I have been employed as an autism consultant for the Brisbane DXC Technology Dandelion program for 5 years. I'm currently working on a pilot program in partnership with the Department of Social Services to implement methodologies from the DXC Dandelion program into the Disability Employment Service program with 8 DES providers across Australia. I'm the mother to an amazing 22-year-old daughter on the autism spectrum who has been my greatest teacher of all. I'm honoured to follow on from the presentations earlier of the myWAY and myWAY employability. My presentation today will hopefully demonstrate why research and tools like these are needed and how they are put into practice to achieve successful employment outcomes for autistic employees. I'm going to talk about support from a practical and operational level and explain how we build employers' autism confidence and understanding and how we advocate for the development of our autistic employees to create a supportive work environment. An important part of the success and sustainability of the DXC and Untapped employment programs is the provision of an autism spectrum consultant, or ASC, working alongside our autistic employees. ASCs offer customised workplace support, guidance, coaching and training for successful workplace integration for the autistic employees and the staff working alongside them. The ASC role is diverse. At times it can be challenging, it's often rewarding, and it requires a multifaceted set of skills not often found together within a professional skill set. Every day is different, and it's hard to capture all that an ASC does in a day on one slide, but I'm going to give it a go. Firstly, we offer direct one-to-one support. An ASC provides person-centred, individualised support to meet the unique needs of each employee. ASCs act as interpreters of common confusing workplace rules, undertaking observation in the workplace and supporting social, interpersonal and technical growth. We work alongside technical staff to ensure individuals are reaching technical milestones. Regular feedback sessions are an important feature of our programs. Regularly scheduled and ad hoc one-to-one meetings take place to provide support, feedback and preventative strategies, and to allow our autistic employees a safe space to debrief and work through any challenges they are having. Ultimately helping the team members to work well in a team, develop resilience, self-understanding, and to be able to self-advocate and ultimately move towards independence. Being based with the team members on a client side means that the ASC understands the workplace and can work collaboratively with the employer and the employee to set employment goals that are realistic and achievable. We develop strategies and goals to suit the needs and preferences of an individual as they acquire new technical and soft skills in the workplace. We create an individual work profile, which includes sensory considerations, learning and communication preferences, and any required accommodations. We document and implement strategies to support learning and working preferences. For example, understanding executive functioning strengths and areas that may need supports. We recommend and implement workplace adjustments where needed and appropriate. We work together with technical staff, ensuring individuals understand the expectations of their role and are on track to meet the social and technical goals in our program curriculum. We often assist with establishing personal goals that assist employment outcomes, for example, financial, dietary or health goals, getting a driver's license or finding accommodation, to name a few. ASCs deliver informal information coaching sessions to the group or as a whole or individually. A highlight of our job is to learn about each person's experience of autism from and with them. We advocate for the strengths of autism, breaking down negative stigma and embracing difference. We help team members to recognise stress and anxiety and to adopt strategies to minimise the impact. They may be the last to know that they are stressed or not coping in the work environment, and our observation may help them to implement steps to help them. Regular informal chats go a long way to helping our autistic employee feel comfortable and settled. We collaboratively develop learning experience to meet their individual needs, and we advocate for their rights. We assess the need for referrals to mental health services and other support services. ASCs are not mental health professionals, but have been trained in mental health. We foster mental well-being, ensuring individuals take their mental health and emotional well-being seriously and seek out relevant professionals where needed. We facilitate connections to other supports such as NDIS, support workers and dietitians. We look for the right mentor who will positively guide the employee and connect them to other employment opportunities. And we offer support and training to colleagues when a team member transitions into their team. Ultimately, our goal is that our employees become fully independent, having developed knowledge of their strengths, strategies to assist them at work, confidence to advocate, managing their mental well-being, and being employed by a supportive and understanding employee. We have a three-phase approach to developing our employees in their roles. Phase one, The staff member is trained in the environment and job processes and commences work activities. Technical and social development is tracked and the hidden curriculum of the workplace is explained. Phase 2 involves building understanding of key strengths and any supports that may be required and having the confidence to advocate for themselves. Phase 3, the individual is set up for a transition into independent employment. This may be connecting the employee to a workplace mentor or buddy, or assistance with developing a resume, or doing interview practice, or help applying for a job. Many of our team members are now working independently in the open job market after receiving the head start through our programs. There is no definitive time frame that these phases have to happen. It very much depends on the individual. However, ASCs believe that these skills are fundamental for sustainable employment. An ASC fosters and supports the client and employer relationship and drives for a socially inclusive workplace. One of the most important steps for an employer is to prepare their staff and culture by promoting inclusivity and acceptance of difference. Integrating patience, understanding, and empathy into people care management practices goes a long way when working with autistic employees. This needs to be encouraged at all levels of management, and time needs to be invested into creating the right work culture. We deliver a suite of autism awareness training to employers through a combination of face-to-face sessions, recorded training, and the use of our Optimize e-learning package. This training builds understanding that autism is a different way of thinking, working, communicating, and connecting with others, and gives strategies to provide support. We ensure employees receive lots of on-the-job training, ensuring trainers are prepared for and encourage lots of questions. Work adjustments and accommodations are needed to ensure our autistic employees have the same chance to work as effectively as everyone else. They don't have to be huge changes, just small changes in communication styles, explaining work protocols and processes. These changes can make huge differences for everyone in the team. We advocate for adjustments such as being located in a quiet area, wearing noise-cancelling headphones, have flexible start times, or relaxed social obligations. Adjustments are not a one-size-fits-all, and it needs to be developed collaboratively between employer and employee. I absolutely loved Orion's comment earlier this morning about building mind ramps for autistic employees. That is the sort of work an autism spectrum consultant tries to do in the workplace. Ongoing management strategies. Autistic employees are likely to have a preference for predictability and routine, needing to know what is happening or what has been scheduled in terms of work tasks and organisational change. We encourage planning ahead to ensure there is work scheduled and provide notice of any changes in advance, communicating why and when the change is happening. If there are challenges or behaviours that are not appropriate in your workplace, we encourage that the employee is told about it as considerately as possible. The employee's intent would not have been to offend or do anything wrong. Perhaps they just weren't aware of a certain expectation of them. Unfortunately, too many times these conversations aren't being had or being had way too late. Encourage and role model open communication. Get to know your employee and learn about autism from them and with them. Ask what supports they need and never do it in a condescending way. Our aim is to upskill employers to build confidence and understanding to support employees independently, and ASC has succeeded when they are no longer needed. Again, there is a three-phase approach to employer readiness. Phase 1 is a commitment to cultural change, investing time and resources to ensure the work environment is ready. Phase 2 is encouraging all staff to attend in autism awareness training, to understand different ways of thinking and working together, and to accept that autism is a lifelong condition that requires ongoing consideration and support. Phase 3 is about considerations with work allocation, development and growth of the autistic employee, and having appropriate ongoing supports in place. There is no definitive timelines for this to happen. This needs to be an ongoing commitment from the employer to support the autistic employee. As we've all been mentioning today, COVID has meant a rethink of our programs. We've all had to adapt to remote working in these COVID times. Until 2020, the DXE and Untapped employment programs were a structured office-based training and delivery program. COVID has meant a rethink to enable continuity of the same structured approach for remote working teams. We've had to reimagine many of our processes to ensure successful transition to remote working and learning. Some of the methods we use to support our teams remotely, of course, the Autism Spectrum Consultant provides autism support to the employees and employers. The use of Life Sherpa app, a specialised mobile support app enabling remote support. Regular check-ins, a virtual check-in with team members to ensure they are doing okay and feeling connected. Ongoing and open communication with managers and supervisors, and regular feedback on work and personal development. I'd like to share a couple of case studies with you now. Firstly, this is a case study of some recent work I have done with an employer in Bendigo who has approximately 76 staff. The work that we did together was over a period of a month. We ran 7 Zoom autism training sessions, and all staff are encouraged to attend. That was 2 autism and inclusive employment sessions, 2 manager training sessions, 2 autism and mental health training sessions, and lastly, an autism and inclusive recruitment practices session held with HR and hiring managers. Some amazing outcomes from attending the training. The staff are now reviewing their recruitment and goal setting processes and ensuring job ads encourage autistic candidates to apply. Autistic employees are now confident to disclose their autism to HR and their managers, and managers are more confident in receiving the disclosure and asking, how can I support you better? They're rewriting interview questions to remove any abstract, imagine if questions and including more situational questions. There are processes in place to manage organisational change better, providing more context for change. All staff are being encouraged to have a work profile identifying their needs and preferences, not just those on the autism spectrum. And prior to moving into a new office next year, they are doing a full workplace environmental assessment to ensure there is identify and minimise any sensory distractions. This employer recognises the benefits that an autistic way of thinking can bring to their organisation, and with a few changes, they want to become an autism employer of choice. I'm now going to talk to you about a couple of case studies of amazing outcomes for some autistic employees that we have worked with. Firstly, it's a young man with incredible pattern recognition, numerical skills, enhanced visual and spatial recognition. And he worked really hard to develop skills to become an employee in his dream role in cybersecurity. And he was able to get that job, which we were so proud of. Unfortunately, he had some social and communication challenges throughout his 6-month probation, and he wasn't told that there were communication and social and interpersonal challenges, and he was just told that he didn't pass probation. how I helped this young man was he contacted me. I was able to write a letter explaining some of the social and communication challenges were due to inherent difficulties with autism, and that he was never told he was doing anything wrong. Thankfully, they offered a second 6-month probation. And throughout that 6 months, we developed a work profile which identified his preferences and needs in the workplace, but also reminded him of the things that he needed to do a little bit better. We set up a regular feedback framework that was predictable for him and for his supervisor. We ran autism training for his colleagues, and that was really well attended and appreciated. And we connected him to other supports, such as the NDIS. I'm happy to say that a couple of weeks ago, he let me know that he's just passed his 6-month probation in earnest, and he is now a fully fledged APS employee. So I'm so proud of him. The second example I want to share with you is a young lady who is incredibly independent, process-driven, and has an excellent memory. She was employed in a role that she sought, she really enjoyed. It was in a cleaning role, and she wanted to work independently in the evenings when there wasn't too many staff around. She followed processes thoroughly and rules thoroughly, and was going really well with the supervisor who was managing her. Unfortunately, her supervisor injured her arm and was replaced with another supervisor who wasn't as clear on the processes as the first person was, and didn't really communicate with the staff member, resulting in her losing her temper and leaving work one evening. We were advised about this incident from the employer, and were able to run some training with them, explaining the need for explanation of change and how it can be really difficult when change is not communicated to an individual on the autism spectrum. And this new supervisor was cutting corners, and this was not going really well for the autistic employee at all. So the employer training explained these traits and characteristics of autism. It also talked about the fight or flight mechanism and how that can be activated in an autistic person if they feel that there is a perceived threat, which she did. And so the employee was able to build some self-understanding as well through this process, and better able to advocate for her needs. And the great outcome was that she did maintain her job. The employer was better at communicating, and is much more supportive. I wanted to demonstrate these two examples because they are from different employers, scaled very differently. Larger organisations can use a more sophisticated method. However, regardless of the size of the employer, it is the same principles of support. It is understanding, it is clear communication, and it is ongoing understanding and coaching. So to finish up, what does an autism consultant do? Basically, we offer support scaled to suit the employee and the workplace. What we've learned is that employers are motivated to hire autistic employees, but they don't always know what to do. We've also learned that autistic employees don't always know about their autism and their needs and what their strengths and goals are. So an ASC can be the conduit between employers and employees, their colleagues, researchers, other supports, mental health professionals, NDIS, support workers, all working together to create sustainable employment. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Sharon, for sharing your experiences with us. Some really useful insights there. We now have about 20 minutes to go through some of the questions that have been sent in from our audience. So thank you to those who have sent in questions or voted on questions. If you have just thought of a question, it is not too late. You can still send them in via the Q&A panel. So I will ask if all of our presenters could please turn on their cameras now so we can see your beautiful faces. Thank you. That's great. So we have received a number of questions. The first question I might throw to you, Sharon, which is just saying a lot of the potential employers that have been discussed are large organisations, and you covered this a little bit at the end of your talk there, but I think it would be great if you could offer some more thoughts around guidance for employers who are small businesses and interested in employing an autistic person. Oh, you're on mute, Sharon.
Sorry, I'm happy to to talk to this one, very much so. It is the same principles that are required regardless of the employer. It's just scaled differently, and obviously bigger organisations may have more sophisticated processes in place than your little corner shop or a little hardware shop. But it is the same principle. If there's one thing that an employer needs to do better, it is communicate openly and honestly and transparently. Just explain expectations, explain why things are important. Think about, whether the employee knows that these social aspects of a role or social expectations of a role. Unfortunately, those are the sorts of things that aren't being shared, and so many autistic people have relayed to me over the years that they've lost a job because they didn't say good morning or good evening when they left. No one ever told them that that was an expectation of their workplace, was to say good morning, that's what we expect. And yet they lose the job because they're not a team player for that reason. And so it's those sorts of conversations that we need to have and just put some context around different workplace expectations. So regardless of who the employer is, that's what we need to be doing. And I get that small businesses don't necessarily have the resources of big organisations, but I can assure you that a small amount of time spent doing these things will mean the employee has a much better understanding of the workplace expectations and will be a great employee.
Excellent. Thanks, Sharon. And Sonia, did you want to add to that just in terms of the IS's relevance for smaller sized employers?
Yeah, I completely agree with Sharon. It's just a matter of scale. I mean, the same strategies apply. Although in our IS study, we did actually have more larger employers. So there probably is this perception that maybe larger employers have more resources, but even small groups and small organisations can make minor adaptations that make an enormous difference. I mean, my research group is a reasonably small research group, maybe about 10 of us, and we have 2 autistic research assistants as part of our research group. So I think it's providing that environment of understanding the individual and working out what supports they need, and we're all very capable of doing that. So, yeah.
Thanks, Sonia. Cheryl, Marina, Brendan, did you want to add anything about that question in particular? No? Yes? No? Okay, great. Oh.
I do.
Okay.
I just want to note that, in our work with myWAY Employability, recently we've been engaging with employers. And we've asked ourselves that question a lot around, what are the fundamental differences, and do these kind of tools apply in different environments? And we've just heard it again and again and again, that it is a question, at the end of the day, it's about culture and attitude. It's really about being committed to making that change and being prepared to have that ongoing conversation with your employer. It's not about autism, it's really about that culture change.
Fantastic. Thank you. Another question, and I might direct this to Marina in the first instance. So there's been a comment that there's a lot of services and support, and we're talking about a lot of case studies for autistic people with lower support needs. And but what about those who have much greater support needs? Can we get some case studies that represent the cross-section of autistic people?
Hi, Kelly. Yes, thank you. That's actually a really good question. And one of the areas that we need to continue working on is providing a broad range of supports for people who've got different employment needs. One of the things about myWAY Employability, the way that we've set it up is that it can be used by people who've got different support needs in terms of exploring activities that might be related to their interests. So unlike other vocational exploration tools, we don't ask people to rate their interest to a specific job or a vocation, because sometimes people, particularly younger people or people who have not been exposed to a broad range of jobs, don't even know what's entailed. So when we ask people to create their vocational personalities, it's based on everyday activities, things that they are likely to have done in school or with family, with friends, and so that they can start to look at where their interests and their strengths lie. We've been asked, is the myWAY Employability Career Exploration tool usable for people with intellectual disabilities? And my answer is yes, just with the right amount of support by their support team. And that's one of the things that myWAY's prefaced on, is that individuals create a small team of people that they can trust, and that these are opportunities for them to be able to start conversations with others. And so the goals might be around building some everyday activities of daily living goals, starting to explore what different occupations might be suited to them, as well as even starting a work experience. So depending on what people's support needs are and the level they're at, there is an opportunity for people to use myWAY and to work with their support team to guide them through.
Fantastic. Thank you, Marina. Sharon, did you want to add anything from your experience of supporting people with higher support needs?
Well, look, I firstly wanted to say it excites me so greatly that we have a tool like myWAY Employability, so that younger autistic people are now starting to learn what their needs are and their strengths are and what their preferences are. We haven't been having those conversations with our young people, I don't believe, well enough. And so it really excites me that these young people are going to hit the employment market with a little bit more insight as to who they are and what their needs are. One of my biggest learning early on in the program with my team was that they didn't understand autism. You know, they had the lived experience, but unfortunately they haven't always been included in discussions around autism and specifically around their autism experience. And so it's really, really exciting that there's tools out there to help with that. And as Marina said, these tools can be helpful for all support needs, as long as the appropriate supports are in place to help the person through that. Yeah, so hopefully that's helpful.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sharon. And just throwing it open to our other panelists as to whether there's anything that you would like to add. Okay, great. Moving on to our next question for Sonia. Can the IST be used for other types of neurodivergence beyond autism?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the IST can be used, for other types of neurodiversity, like, ADHD and CP and other diagnostic groups. But a lot of the practices that we describe in the IST are just playing good HR practices, like, talking to the individual, understanding their needs, understanding their work environment, their job tasks, looking at the match between the person's skills and their job tasks, and working to their strengths. I mean, all of that is just really great HR practice, actually. So it can absolutely be applied to other neurodiverse individuals, but also just to workplaces in general. So, yeah.
Excellent. And what about myWAY employability in that respect? Is it relevant for other types of neurodivergence? And I believe you already discussed intellectual disability, but perhaps you might like to talk a little bit more about that aspect as well.
Kelly, one of the things that we have done as part of the co-design, the messaging that we heard from the autistic individuals that we collaborated with in the design of myWAY Employability, is that they wanted to be able to have a tool that was literal, provided clear information, wasn't confusing to navigate, and wasn't distracting. And those are some basic universal design principles that I think make it inclusive for a wide range of people. One of the things that at the moment that we can't do, because this is our first iteration of myWAY Employability, is looking to see how we can make it more accessible for people who might have visual impairments into the future. But at the moment, I think it's appropriate for a wide range of users, including neurotypical job seekers. So we've tried to be as inclusive as possible in the design and the content.
Brendan, thank you, Marina. Brendan, did you want to add anything there?
Oh, only that I think we still want to hear from you if you are, one of those scenarios, because we're still learning and growing as a product. So to be able to understand those sort of scenarios, to be able to learn from and build for as well would be very helpful. So please reach out.
Excellent. And while, Brendan, while you're off mute, would you be happy to share, are there any particular learnings that stick out in your mind for designing websites for autistic people?
Yeah, definitely. I'd say there's probably two things there. There's test often, and there's also collaborate. And when I say test, I don't just mean, test if a button works, test if a screen shows up. It's the fact that you don't need to build an entire product and then go out and test it with the autistic community. You can test an idea, you can test a feature, you can test a sentence phrase, that kind of thing. You can test a design. So simply progress is far better than perfectionism. So to be able to just progress something, take it out to the community, learn what their response is, feedback, opinions, perspectives, all that sort of thing, and then actually collaborate towards iterating it so it gets better and better each time.
Fantastic. So moving on to a question now for Sharon. Well, I'll direct it to Sharon in the first instance, but anyone is welcome to jump in. Wondering about your experiences with working with the NDIS and what you can share in that regard.
It's been a journey with NDIS as it is with any program, and we've had huge successes with a lot of our employees here in Brisbane. It's about finding the right providers that offer the right supports for, and it has to be the right person. As with any sort of support for an autistic person. So we've had great success with the NDIS. we, I guess, recognise with DXE and Untapped, and you probably all have as well, that there wasn't a lot of established employment supports available through before NDIS and in the early stages of NDIS. And it's an exciting time now that people are starting to think about employment supports through NDIS, and Untapped is now an NDIS provider, because we do recognise the need for things like the Life Sherpa app being expanded on for more people, and having the opportunity to get work profiles and employment coaching and an autism consultant and things like that. So the NDIS is certainly can play a really big part, I think, if you get the right people in employment outcomes and success.
Fantastic. Thanks, Sharon. And would any of our other panelists like to add anything in that regard? No? Great. So I can see Orion has popped back up. I'll just ask one last question, which and I might throw it open. But so the question was just about support and insights for late diagnosed autistic adults who are looking for employment support when they're already employed in an organisation stably, but they don't have the support that they need. How can they? Is there support for them to get the support that they need?
I'd like to comment, I guess, on my recent work I've done with an employer that I talked about earlier in my presentation. The biggest outcome of that training was that people on the spectrum already employed within that organisation were coming forward, never feeling comfortable to do that before. And I think what we need to do there is have autism training for staff that explains autism as a different way of connecting with the world, a different way of communicating and working and thinking. Not as a deficit, not as a lesser than. Autism is just a different brain wiring, and every single person on the planet, their brain is wired differently. And so I think through talking with staff and colleagues and employers in that manner has been really helpful, so that employees themselves don't have negative stigma when talking about themselves. They're more confident to come forward and say, hey, this is me. And, you know, then managers were saying, well, okay, I think, you know, they suspected all along that their employee was on the spectrum, but didn't know how to help them and what support to provide. So it just opened the door for the manager to turn around and say, well, what is it I need to do to support you? And those conversations started happening. And so I think it's about getting employers the right education around autism and support in the workplace.
Fantastic. Thanks, Sharon. And I will also just add that we have a session tomorrow about advocacy in employment, which Orion mentioned earlier this morning. And I think that for the particular questioner who posted that question, I would definitely recommend that they tune into that session tomorrow, which is at 11 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. I'll now hand back to Orion to take us through.
Thank you all. You'll be happy to know time does not permit the reflections of an autistic MC. We must go. Your loss. That's all I can say. The next session in the main program is supporting well-being. It starts now. So please, you could leave this chat now and click on the next session. I hope you enjoy it, and we'll talk to you very soon.